Hi, I'm Dr. Lily Brown, and welcome to part 2 of our podcast on preparing for a disaster, which, as a brief reminder, we are making now because it's March 18th. As we're recording this, we are in the middle of a break from COVID surges, but anticipating that there could be another surge to come. And here we have part 2 of tips for preparing for a future disaster, whether it's COVID related or not. I'd like to start by reminding you that a big part of preparation for disaster is related to this idea of finding grace under pressure. A major contributor to anxiety is intolerance for uncertainty, which means someone who says, I'm not willing to feel anxious, is likely to engage in a number of behaviors to attempt to control a situation, which might actually be somewhat uncontrollable. When we think about disaster preparation in general, there are a lot of pieces of disasters that are completely out of our control. And if you get obsessed with the idea that I have to get it all under my control, it's a recipe for feeling terribly anxious. So anxiety management, as we think about preparation for disaster, requires willingness to tolerate uncertainty. The reality is, whether you're willing or unwilling to tolerate uncertainty, uncertainty is a part of disasters, sort of by definition. And so to become resilient in the face of future disasters, it's essential to practice tolerating uncertainty. And you might start thinking about strategies to tolerate uncertainty in areas that have nothing to do with the pandemic, nothing to do with other disasters, maybe having to do with other areas of your life that are sort of less high stakes. How can you practice being willing to feel uncertainty and being willing to be in a place of uncertainty? Because the reality is, whether or not you're willing to be there, oftentimes we're there anyway. So you might as well embrace the uncertainty for the sake of reducing your suffering and reducing your anxiety. There's a strategy that I like to try when I'm stuck in this place of wanting to control things that I cannot control. And it's called the 4x4 strategy. This is a way to get myself out of my mind and anchored into the present moment. If you've ever heard of this before, you know that the 4x4 strategy is a really simple breathing exercise. It looks like breathing into the count of 4, holding it to the count of 4, exhaling to the count of 4, and holding it again. And then you repeat that 4 times. Because this is a relatively brief podcast, I'm not going to walk through this with you together, but the 4x4 strategy is something that I use all the time. If I've had a dysregulated meeting, if I read a news report that says, the stealth variant's coming, 4x4 is a great way to stop all the mental chatter, to just get anchored in the here and now, and to remember that as I sit in this chair, my life is pretty okay right now. Even when some horrible things have happened, in this moment, I'm okay. The 4x4 strategy is a way to help myself remember that. Let's talk about some other strategies briefly to foster emotion regulation. And this is important because, we think about overall strategies for building mindfulness and for staying in the present moment, but it's a lot easier said than done. I think about how learning to be mindful, it's not complicated, but it requires constant commitment, constantly saying yes to being in the here and now, as opposed to, I got to be thinking 10 steps ahead, or I got to think about what happened in the past to figure out why it happened the way it did. Both of those circumstances are likely to lead us to feeling totally overcome with strong emotions, anxiety in the future, depression in the past. And so it's so essential to practice saying yes to coming back just to the here and now again and again and again and again. So one way to foster emotion regulation to survive a crisis is to practice improving your awareness of your own emotions and your own signals. And what I mean by that is, many of you may know that there are 3 core parts to an emotion. There are the thoughts or cognitions. This is what goes through your mind when you're having a strong emotion. There are the behavior urges, which is what you do or what you want to do when you're feeling a strong emotion. And then there's the bodily response or your physiology. like your heart racing, or you're feeling a sense of being weighted down when you feel sad. Every emotion has these three parts: what you think, what you do, and what you feel. Each of these three parts also talks to the other. So what you're telling yourself influences what you do influences how you feel, and how you feel influences what you tell yourself. Step number one of improving your ability to downgrade or downshift your emotions is become really aware of what these emotions are telling you. You might think about mapping out this triangle the next time you're feeling a strong emotion. Ask yourself, what's going through my head right now? Write those thoughts down. What am I tempted to do right now? Write that down. Where do I feel it in my body? This is an opportunity to get some distance from the intensity of the emotion so that you then have your wits about you to decide, given all this, what do I need to do to be prepared? I hope this was helpful to you. If you have questions about any of this, feel free to shoot me an email, and I hope that you'll join us for a future podcast. Thank you.